We are currently in day 6 of the Trump-triggered government shutdown, and as Trump's polling continues to collapse and blame against him for triggering the shutdown continues to skyrocket, his press secretary, Karoline Leavitt, has the unenviable task of confronting reporters and desperately trying to spin this situation, as demonstrated by this latest disastrous press briefing from just a few minutes ago. But before we unpack all that, if you end up liking this video and you want to support the channel, please be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and alert bells before you go. All right, friends, we have several clips to play about a variety of topics: shutdown, ICE, Ghislaine Maxwell, former accomplice of Jeffrey Epstein, all sorts of things. We're going to start with this one here.
Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said the FDA was required by federal law to approve the new abortion pill last week. Is the administration considering steps to undo this in light of requests from pro-life Congress members and organizations?
I think Secretary Kennedy and the Department of Health and Human Services, as I addressed in the briefing last week, were following the law, and we will continue to do so. As I said last week as well, it's not an endorsement of this drug by any means. It's just a law that they were following.
So this is Trump starting to face pushback from the evangelical, quote-unquote, pro-life, I would call them pro-forced birth, right, about the fact that the FDA approved a generic abortion bill on Trump's watch. Now, I would argue this is good for women's rights and reproductive rights in general, but it speaks to the tension that faces the Trump coalition, because a lot of people were expecting RFK Jr. and Trump, and understandably so, given how unprincipled they are, to actually reduce like Plan B and mifepristone, and just, basically try to eliminate either, contraception or abortion pills, given that they've signaled as such in the past. But currently, they have approved the release of a generic abortion bill, and it's pissing off a lot of people on the right. Here's another clip.
We heard you say that you want people to call their Democratic senators. Is the president calling Democratic senators himself? Can you say what he's doing today to resolve the shutdown?
Yep, I was just in the Oval Office. He was on the phone with Speaker Johnson. He's also spoken with the Senate Majority Leader, who are in touch with, of course, moderate Democrats and Democrats across the board, who we understand hopefully want to do the right thing by their constituents to reopen the government. So the president is being kept very well apprised of the ongoing shutdown on Capitol Hill. And of course, his position is very clear. There's nothing to negotiate, just reopen the government, and then we can talk about all the important issues facing our country.
Oof, that's not good, right? So it's all the Democrats' fault. Donald Trump really wants the government to reopen. Oh, okay, so Trump is actually reaching out to Democrats and talking with them, right? No, he's just mostly like bitching about Democrats to Republicans, and, he says there's nothing to negotiate. So that's how we're handling these negotiations. Not exactly good, and that will almost certainly not help his approval rating on this issue, because the more that clip circulates, the more people are like, oh, Trump has the ultimate responsibility to get this done. He triggered it in the first place, and he's apparently coasting through and not making any sort of meaningful efforts to reopen the government. Not good, Karoline. Not good.
And then on the Affordable Care Act, is he willing to share more on what he'd like to negotiate on the Affordable Care Act later? Is he willing to say specifically what he would like and when?
But look, the president is definitely committed to fixing and improving our healthcare system. You saw it again last week when he had one of the largest pharmaceutical companies in the world coming into the Oval Office and promising to lower drug prices by 200, 300, 100% in many cases for various types of drugs for American patients. That is a huge fix to a broken system that has been ripping off the American people for far too long. So the president's very committed to this. But right now, we need to reopen the federal government, and the president is remaining very firm in that position.
So again, really stupid. Again, mathematically, you can only reduce the price of a drug by 100% at maximum, which would make it free. Anything else beyond that, again, mathematically impossible. You would effectively be paying American people or, drug patients to take the drug in the first place, which of course is financially unfeasible for any company. So again, really stupid comment by Karoline Leavitt, but she's obligated to regurgitate her boss's own stupid comments as well, rather than contradict them. Here's another clip.
What is President Trump's expectations for talks today and I guess this week in Egypt? And is there a new timeline that the president is giving all sides to reach an agreement?
Yes, there are technical talks happening right now in Egypt amongst Special Envoy Witkoff and Mr. Kushner, as well as their respective parties from all sides. What we saw take place on Friday, and I have not commented on that from the podium yet, is truly remarkable. You've seen all sides of this conflict agree that this war needs to end.
All sides have publicly postured that the war has needed to end for months, Now, could Trump potentially get something done here, which no president has ever accomplished? At least the Biden administration failed to accomplish. It's possible. But again, I refuse to give Trump the benefit of the doubt here, and I believe you all should as well. You can't rule anything out. Anything is possible, but we need to actually see words on paper in the terms of the deal, in terms of a ceasefire between Israel and Hamas, number one. Number two, I don't want her to skirt by Mr. Kushner. It's Donald Trump's son-in-law, okay? Donald Trump's son-in-law is once again corruptly involving himself in the Trump administration. In the first Trump administration, he was effectively the de facto shadow secretary of state. I can't remember who. It might have been Rex Tillerson, the first Trump secretary of state in the first Trump term, famously bitched about Jared Kushner's involvement. Like, dude, what is this nepotism here? This guy who has no diplomatic expertise whatsoever, who's a national security risk, according to the intelligence communities. They advised Trump, hey, do not give this guy national security clearance because he's a liability given all his outstanding debt to foreign nations. And Trump overrode them and gave him a security clearance anyway. That's nepotism of the highest order. That's infinitely far worse and far more corrupt and far more corruptly nepotistic than anything we saw, for example, with Joe and Hunter Biden. But of course, MAGA can't process that. So as corrupt as that was in his first term, and then Jared Kushner left the Trump administration when the Trump administration ended and got a $2 billion investment from the Saudis. Again, very corrupt. And now he's once again involving himself in diplomacy and foreign affairs in the second Trump administration as a de facto shadow special envoy. Really corrupt, really sinister. And again, with respect to the deal, I hope Trump succeeds and makes a really, really good deal for the parties involved and ends a genocide in Gaza. I would love that. I think that would be great. I refuse to believe that it's going to happen until it actually happens, until we see the terms of the deal. So here's another clip.
Thanks, Caroline. I have two questions. On the layoff of federal workers, potentially, the president said yesterday that Democrats will be to blame if federal workers lose their jobs. Historically, though, in past shutdowns, workers have been furloughed, but they have not been laid off en masse. So wouldn't that be the president's call to lay people off?
As I've said repeatedly, Caitlin, this conversation about layoffs would not be happening right now if the Democrats did not vote to shut the government down. And as I also said last briefing as well, we are $37 trillion in debt, and the government is not receiving any cash. So someone has to look at the balance sheet and be good stewards of the American taxpayer.
Okay, so I don't know if you noticed this, but again, she just totally told on herself. She told on Trump. She revealed that Trump's full of shit. So first off, we know that Trump is, laying workers off simply to try to screw Democratic politicians, Democratic voters, blue cities and blue states. He said it specifically. We're going to target these Democrat agencies, try to hit them where it hurts by targeting liberals, progressives, blue cities, blue states, people whom he views as Democratic constituents, by targeting their employment in the federal government or their health care. Okay, so he's made his vindictive streak very clear. You won't bend the knee, so I'm going to hurt your constituents, number one. Number two, even if we take Karoline Leavitt at face value, although this is not about retribution or revenge, this is about the balance sheet. Two things. $8 trillion of that $37 trillion was added to the debt by Donald Trump in his first term. He broke records as the most profligate president in a single 4-year term. He added more to the national debt and deficit than any president, and he promised to eliminate the national debt when he ran for office the first time. So he failed abysmally. Number one, she refuses to mention that. Number two, I thought you guys were making countless sums of money from the tariffs. You see how she says it? The government's not getting any money. We have to look at the balance sheet. Well, wait a minute. Did you guys stop the tariffs? Are tariffs not? And I thought those tariffs were a massive success. I thought you guys were getting like $16 trillion, just trillions of dollars in tariffs, hundreds of billions of dollars to check the tariff shelf. And now she just told on herself. Well, either you're lying and you're doing this out of cruelty, or it turns out your tariffs have been a grotesque failure. Either way, you lose the debate and it's all your fault. So interesting for Karoline Leavitt to admit that. Pretty stupid of her to do so. And Democrats should actually pounce on that. Wait a minute. Use the tariff revenue you guys are collecting to fund the government during the shutdown negotiations. Unless, of course, you guys are making that sort of tariff revenue and you've been lying the whole time. Here's another clip.
This briefing as well. We are $37 trillion in debt, and the government is not receiving any cash. So someone has to look at the balance sheet and be good stewards of the American taxpayer dollar. And layoffs are an unfortunate consequence of that.
first term, for example?
Well, as I'm telling you now, this administration is focusing on checking the balance sheet and ensuring we're doing the right thing by the American taxpayer. And again, these conversations about layoffs would not be happening in the White House today if not for the Democrat shutdown. And they have a choice to change that. They have another opportunity.
So again, it sure seems like a threat, right? It sure seems like that's really what this is. It's just, hey, if you guys don't want to get, it's a shame. You guys don't want some shutdowns, then maybe you should just bend the knee to Donald Trump, right? Maybe it's what you should do. It's pretty transparent what she's admitting to right there. But I like the fact that Caitlin Collins pointed out, well, wait a minute, there was the longest shutdown in American history happened in Trump's first term, and there weren't layoffs like this. So were you guys not good stewards of the economy back then? Are you saying your boss was fiscally irresponsible back then? She's just totally screwed. There's no consistent way to thread all these needles. Here's another clip.
Over the weekend, sorry, my second question. A federal judge over the weekend that the president had appointed to the bench in his first term in office basically argued that he could not deploy other states' National Guards to Portland, basically said that it was untethered, his argument, to what is actually happening on the ground. Which local officials in Portland have said that the National Guard is needed there?
With all due respect to that judge, I think her opinion is untethered in reality and in the law. The president is using his authority as Commander-in-Chief, U.S. Code 12406, which clearly states that the president has the right to call up the National Guard in cases where he deems it's appropriate. And
that's a gross oversimplification. The fact of the matter is that these things are justiciable, and the president isn't entitled to just, send in the National Guard whenever he fucking feels like it. And that's what a ridiculous thing to even insinuate. What a ridiculous thing for anybody to even argue, because by that logic, the next Democratic president can just snap his fingers and send blue state National Guard to any red state, and red states can't do anything about it. When we win, you lose, right? That's a really stupid notion. Do you really want, and do you think Democratic presidents have that power? Red states? Of fucking course not. So why would you assume that Trump would have it here? It's categorically insane. Again, a Trump-appointed judge smacking him down there is pretty embarrassing. Here's another clip.
But no local officials that you can point to that have said we need the National Guard? Because I spoke to the police chief of Portland last week. He said that the president's claims just don't match up with what's happening on the ground.
I would encourage you as a reporter to go on the ground and to take a look at it for yourself, because there's been many members of the press, not press in this room, but independent journalists, some of whom we'll be inviting to the White House very soon to share their stories, because they have been in the middle of these riots and they have witnessed the anarchy that is taking place night after night. It's on video. You should play it on your show. You have a great opportunity on prime time on CNN to show your audience. Yeah, but you're probably talking to partisan Democrat officials who are opposed to everything this president does. You should also ask the people who live in Portland. We've actually heard from many members of the community who have said that this is complete civil disobedience.
Well, maybe you're just talking to partisan Trump voters, right? So, I mean, it's so stupid. What a dumb and ridiculous argument and justification to proffer here. Pretty ridiculous and embarrassing by Karoline Leavitt. Everything you guys point to is like blue and Democrat. We're talking to independent journalists like Nick Sortor. Yeah, sure, he's like a big Trump supporter and a conspiracy theorist, but if you ignore that, he's pretty reliable. Yeah. Also, we read the horoscopes, and the horoscopes say that Portland, Oregon is a hellscape. So, yeah, get wrecked, Lib. So stupid. Here's another clip.
Sure, go ahead.
Thank you. The Democrats have questioned and scrutinized the president's comments about using potentially the military, American cities, as training grounds for the military. And when you look at Portland, Chicago, local and state officials say that their local law enforcement is able to handle the situations, these protests on the ground. The president says that Portland is burning, using that as justification for the National Guard in Portland. But when you look here in Washington, D.C., the president just last week said it is now a completely safe city, and there are still National Guard members on the streets that are not involved in ICE activities. Can you provide the justification for the White House here in Washington, D.C., why the National Guard members continue to be out on the street?
Great question. In other words, hey, you guys say this is about fighting crime, but you also say that crime is basically reduced to nothing here in Washington, D.C. You solve the problem. So why the fuck are the National Guard still here? And you could just see it like, oh, that's a good question. Because we want them to be.
Because Washington, D.C. has invited the National Guard here. Why? Because...
Do you see that smile? She's so pissed. She's so pissed because he has her. He's like, oh, shit, that's a really good question. Because we were invited to stay forever.
The mayor is doing the right thing, unlike mayors in other cities like Portland, as Caitlin and others have pointed out. who refuse to see that there are positive results from when local law enforcement works with federal law enforcement.
Okay, but even if that's true, you said you solved the problem. So his point is, why are you still there? Why are you still there? She has no good answer to that question. We'll wrap up. There's so many clips I could show you. Change topic a little bit. Ghislaine Maxwell, convicted sex trafficker, former friend of Donald Trump's, former girlfriend and madam and accomplice of Jeffrey Epstein. What about her?
Today, the Supreme Court declined to hear Ghislaine Maxwell's appeal. Will Trump rule out granting her clemency? Is that something the White House is considering?
It's not something I've heard discussed, and we don't comment on clemency requests that may or may not have been made, but I'm certainly not tracking that one at this point.
So again, that's not a no. You would think it'd be like, oh, hell no. Of all the terrible, terrible, crimes that Ghislaine Maxwell wasn't simply, accused of, but she was successfully convicted of. Of course, we would rule something like that. That's absurd. We can't possibly do anything like that. And instead, she's like, well, we can't comment. So sure seems like Trump really is considering pardoning or offering clemency to Ghislaine Maxwell, his former friend. Pretty gross. We're going to wrap up with a couple more clips, starting with this one.
If the courts allow you to ultimately send in the National Guard into Chicago and Portland, do Democrats not have reason to be concerned that there are long-term plans by this administration to keep U.S. military or the National Guard in American cities, like what we're seeing here in Washington?
Why should they be concerned about the federal government offering help to make their cities a safer place? They should be concerned about this. They should be concerned about the fact that people in their cities right now are being gunned down every single night. And the president, all he's trying to do is fix it. And there has been a complete smear campaign by the Democrats and the media, quite frankly. I was reading Political Playbook this morning, one of the most inside the Beltway newsletters you can find. And you guys are framing this like the president wants to take over the American cities with the military.
Because he says shit like that, Carolyn. That's your fault. That's Trump's fault. If Trump doesn't want for people to believe that about him, then maybe Trump should be like a radically different person who isn't who he is and says what he says and does what he does. And maybe people wouldn't assume, based on the shit you say and do and threaten and promise, that you're a bunch of fascists. Maybe. So there you have it. Don't envy her position. The polling is not good on this, at least so far, and they're desperately trying to spin. In the meantime, let me know what you think in the comments.